Hi ladies, I'm in Ava Grace's nursery today. Hello. I'm so excited because it's International Women's Day. Yeah, and we're women, right? Yeah, we're women and women are amazing. We have the ability to give birth, we create in our wombs. We create babies. I got the chance to do this recently, as you may be aware. And it made me even more amazed at what it is to be a woman. And like my husband on a couple of occasions said, I'm jealous of the connection you have with the baby. Like, wow. And to have gone through that, how do you feel? He asked me. I have a really amazing husband. And so in many ways, I may be kind of shielded from a lot of what women go through when they deal with men in their lives. Men are physically more powerful, physically stronger, bigger in many ways than women. Men generally tend to have all the positions of power in government and the workplace. So men control the things around us a lot. And even if we were to stand up to a man, maybe we would feel a little bit timid because they are the stronger sex, us being the weaker sex, right? So this is something that I think about, I reflect on, but having men around me that tend to be loving, tend to be quite sweet, even having maybe what some would call feminine qualities, because for some reason along the way, we've determined that having caring and having any kind of softness is a feminine quality, when actually men have these godly qualities. One of the fruits of the Spirit is gentleness. And so it's really interesting to be a Christian on International Women's Day, isn't it? I think about my relationship with the men around me, and generally, like I said, it's very positive. But I, like most of you, have probably had experiences that have been really negative with men, where I've felt genuinely afraid for my safety in a way that you wouldn't feel with women. I've been on at least one bad date where a man wouldn't let me out of the car, or one time a man took me to a location that I wasn't familiar with and tried to force me to kiss him and things like that. That on those days, we may lament the fact that we are women. We may lament the fact that it feels like we can be taken advantage of. And so my heart goes out to all of the women who feel that way. On top of this, and I really have to unload a little here, on top of this, there's issues around the world, globally, of women being sexually trafficked, with women being, there's something called feminicide, where if a woman is the one who's murdered, the police don't really go after it and try to find the killer. Stuff like that happens not in the United States so much as around the world, although there are some subtleties, some subtle ways that the enemy is working in the hearts and minds of men to destroy. And the Bible is very clear about how men should treat women. Isn't that right? My baby's like, oh yeah. That the men should treat women like Christ loved the church, right? And so what that means is that they're lifted, that they're celebrated, not to the point of making them better or placing them above, but in a sacrificial way, showing sacrificial love. And you don't really see too much of that in today's society, do you? So instead, what we're seeing is quite the opposite. We're seeing pornography spreading like wildfire. But in the midst of all of this, we do see a lot of good things happening. And so today, with my coffee, hi Elena, hi Kirsten. Oh, Kirsten, hey, thanks for watching. I wanted to share a couple things that are harder for me to share because they share some of my personal weaknesses, but I'm hoping that some of you will identify with and be able to say me too in that kind of a way. Bless you. Bless you. And I wanted to see if you feel the same way about these things. So the topic that I wanted to share was our relationships with men and money. So I have a personal belief that a man's brain, his very being, from creation, was wired to work. Wired to work. And as women, we are wired to make it all work. We're wired to move things into position, to make things come together. We can see the bigger picture a lot of the time, and men tend to look at what's directly in front of them and often with brute force try to make things come together. So I have that as a framework. I believe that that's a biblical view. But it wasn't until my mentor in New York really started talking to me about my relationship with my husband and kind of picking at why I felt. She wanted to know why I felt the need to be the breadwinner. And she did it masterfully. This godly woman really took the time with me to understand the nuances of my thinking so that she could help me get some breakthrough. I was raised in a household where both of my parents worked full-time. In fact, my mom went back to work after I was born and my siblings were born, and I was either in childcare with my grandparents until the evenings or the weekends while she worked full-time, and she was the breadwinner for many years. Her salary outperformed my dad's because of her role at the university where she worked. And my mom's a very intelligent woman, and I've always looked up to her and in those ways, and I've always wanted to emulate her. And I think that's part of the reason why I felt so strongly that I wanted to prove myself to the point where I was outperforming my husband. Have any of you ever felt that drive or urge? I was on YouTube earlier today and I was talking to Becky, and she had this similar situation where she had gone through a period of time where her husband was unemployed, and that happened to me too. Underemployed or unemployed? Can someone tell me, raise your hand, if your husband is currently underemployed or unemployed? I want to know in the comments. I know it's hard to admit to it, but maybe you've admitted it to everyone else, so why not share here? I have some encouragement for you today. And I think it's going to be powerful, especially because I know that you're the kind of women who want to honor God, and also you're ambitious. You have personal goals. You have a desire to be your personal best, and you have an inner drive that maybe could be considered uncommon for women. I know that I had some challenges identifying with a lot of the women around me. Part of the reason I made this group was because I didn't feel content to fall into the traditional roles where I would just be like a homemaker and I don't know, I was afraid to fade into the background and never pursue any of my personal goals and dreams. Hi, Teresa. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Anyway, so I felt different than a lot of the women in my church. So tell me in the comments if maybe you're going through this struggle. I think that in marriage in particular, it's one of the biggest struggles you can face when your husband is unemployed or underemployed. And when I say underemployed, I just mean that you guys are always having to find a way to piece it together, to fill in the gaps. Anyway, during this time, Becky and I both experienced, there was a lot of attack from the enemy against our minds and hearts, making us puff ourselves up and become more prideful. It totally happened to me, and I remember distinctly complaining to a friend at work one day, and I had this big problem with complaining about my husband. And I would complain and complain, and one of the things I told her one day is, I just feel like I have a son instead of a husband. It's so frustrating. Every time I do anything, I feel like he's just taking and taking, and he never contributes, and he seems so lazy, and he's so, and I was just so mad, and it was just coming out, and as it was coming out, I could almost feel the poison of it, the poison of giving life to those words with my mouth, because as you know, ladies, the power of life and death is in the tongue. Yeah, it is. What is going on, little girl? What is going on? So can any of you admit today or confess today to having complained a lot about the men in your life? Hi, and maybe those complaints are warranted. Yeah. Maybe those complaints are fully warranted, but is that the best that we can be doing? As we look at our lives, and I know we are ambitious Christian women, is there something that we could be doing better with our mouths than complaining? Something that would actually help? Well, I think there is. We can stop complaining and find other things to talk about, because there's plenty to talk about. And if we can move away from complaint in general about those kinds of topics, then that would be really good, I think, because we'd be beginning to build a different future with our tongues. Hey, Shannon, it's good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining me. And please comment as we go. I would love to add your thoughts into here. So as I started to rein in and harness that tongue, which was so wildly against my husband, every little and big thing that he did, all of my girlfriends knew about it. And basically the story that they had about my husband is like, he seems good, but behind the scenes, he's pretty frustrating, and I don't know why we do this. I think we want to be nice to each other. We don't want each other to, we don't want to have jealousy rise in one another, so we make our lives seem worse than they are, or we just emphasize the bad things. My daughter is giving her thoughts as well. Yeah, I don't know why we do this. I think that's why I was doing it, maybe. I wanted them to be my friends, and I didn't want to seem, I don't know. I don't complain about my husband anymore, and maybe that causes some friction in some women's hearts, but that's not on me. I'm not going to destroy my relationship. I'm going to build it up with my words. So, as I started to do this, I saw a profound change. I started to rein in the tongue, and it started to change my thinking too. I noticed how often I complained, and it really helped me. I saw my relationship improve with my husband, and I think that if you can try at least to become first aware of the amount of complaint that could be happening, maybe this is cultural in your church, I know it was in mine, then it'll make a big difference. It really will. And I promise you, no one will hate you for not joining in the throng of complaints. In fact, you could even, as someone complains about their husband, instead of like joining in, what you could do is find a part of the conversation. Like, so you're complaining about how he installed your fan wrong, right? You could then start talking about fans. Don't talk about the husband more and the more bad things he did, but go down a different train of thought. Just some ideas for you. And now to get even deeper into this, and I shared this on YouTube. I don't know how I got the guts to do that. This happened pretty recently. Oh, good. Shannon is doing this now, building him up and not speaking any negative words. Yeah, don't join in. Change the subject. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be blatantly like, let's talk about something else, ladies. I am no longer complaining about my husband. You don't have to be like that. You could, like I said, follow a little path. Follow one of the paths out of the complaint circle and into something more constructive. So here's the other story, and it has to do with money. God made it clear to me along the way that for some reason my love of money was getting in the way of my relationship with my husband. Let me explain. So we talked about underemployment, unemployment. I want to, especially if you're dealing with that right now, and even if you're not, this can be effective, and I think for you. I want to share this story. The Lord convicted me one day as I was praying for my husband's job and his work and his opportunities. The Lord convicted me saying, if your husband made twice as much as he does, would you treat him differently? And I was shocked. This is not a question I would have asked myself, ladies. This was from the Holy Spirit, and he convicted me in that moment because I realized I would treat him differently. And that was super scary because that meant that in my heart was a seed of the love of money that outweighed my love of my husband. Scary. So for those of you who are dealing with men who are unemployed or underemployed, I especially urge you in this area to address the heart issue that lies in you about how you're going to treat your husband based on his cash flow. And begin to treat him like however you would treat him if he were doing really, really, really well for you and your family. So well that you had everything you wanted and more. Because honestly, that is what God is calling us to in the first place. And if you're not treating him with that level of respect and admiration, then there is a root of the love of money in there that you need to pull, and you need to dig and get every last hair of that root out of your heart today. Begin to treat him differently. Begin to treat him differently. Treat him the way you would treat him if he were that six-figure guy. Because in the spirit, I'm telling you, that love that you're withholding it, could be the level of love that he needs to get the gumption to go out and get a job, to go out and ask for that raise. You know what? Men and their mind are connected. They're built to be to go out and provide for their families. You've probably heard people tell you this for years, and you're like, yeah, my husband ain't providing, and yeah, so you're like, there must be something wrong with his brain, Well, I urge you, ladies, that as women, you are powerful in your husband's life to love him into greater levels of service to his church, greater levels of service to his family, and greater just commitment and caring toward his family and all the people around him, and it comes through in your respect and admiration. So I don't know what he's like, this guy that you got. He might be a lot of tough things, and we could talk about those things a different time. I've been doing some reading from counseling books about how to deal with men with anger issues and how to deal with men who are passive, which my husband went through a period where he was totally passive, unemployed, and there didn't seem to be a light at the end of that tunnel. I thought, oh my gosh, I might have gotten stuck with a dud. Honestly, that's what I was sort of thinking. But when God changed my heart about how to treat my husband and how to elevate him to the place before he even got there, in my heart and mind, and treat him with the love and respect that he should have, regardless of his income, yeah, amazing things happened. And I wouldn't be able to have the time to talk to you about it right now, because I would have had to be stomping away at my laptop right now trying to make a buck to fill in the gap if this weren't true. When I began to look at my husband and treat him like he deserved to be treated, regardless of his income, I began to see him grow and develop and step it up. Because for the man, the woman's respect is paramount. My mentor I mentioned earlier, one day after listening to all the things I had told her about why I felt the need to be the breadwinner and why I felt the need to, just do my best and forget the rest, as they say, she looked me dead in the eye one day and she said, Laura, you're going to love it someday when your husband's the breadwinner. And I was like stunned. I was silent. I was thinking to myself, I would? And like, it was kind of disturbing to the person that I had been. A very prideful, arrogant, puffed up woman who loved the fact that she was the breadwinner. Not just appreciated the opportunity in her life, but loved having the upper hand on her husband mentally. Ooh. God has done a profound work in me, ladies, and it's part of the reason why my tagline is follow God's signs, not dollar signs. That doesn't mean that you can't work. That doesn't mean that you don't have goals, financial goals for yourself. But if God is giving you a sign today to love your husband, regardless of his income level, at the same level that you would if you were the highest income earner of anyone you knew, then by all means, take that as God's sign to follow him instead of the love of money. And that is all I have to say today. Love you so much. Go out and serve. Serve with all your heart. Love God. Love your husbands, love your boyfriends, love the people in your life, love your dads, love all the men. This is your opportunity. It's International Women's Day. Go show them what you can do with this love. You can just lift everyone up around you with this love that you've got. This is what you were made for. Love you. Bye.